can you build an app that you can load onto any cheap Android phone and then give it to a child aged 4 to 10? And can the child by themselves learn how to read and write without the help of a teacher, without the help of a parent, without the help of a sibling?
How we came to look at Chimple is when we started, our problem statement was how can we create a learning environment which is edtech enabled, which can be implemented by somebody who is not super educated.
How did you look into the adoption process? How you managed to make Chimple from just a tool within a classroom scale to something that is embedded within an education system at the national level?
But we have built in adaptiveness even in the placement diagnostic assessment, where it's game based, in which a child feels like they're playing the game and are moving ahead in the assessments.
To make a big difference, you don't have to start with $1 billion and a whole bunch of PhDs who are experts in specialty areas. That there are tremendous things that can be done by groups of dedicated people who really care about children and who have, the STEM knowledge to be able to apply digital technologies.
Welcome to the Digital Education Dialogue podcast, brought to you by the Digital School, where we explore the evolving relationship between education, technology, and global development. I am Waleed Al Ali, and I am pleased to welcome you to season 2 of the series. This season, we are focusing on artificial intelligence in education, not from purely technological lens, but through the broader question it raises around equity, access, culture, policy, and systems transformation, particularly within the context of underrepresented in global AI conversation. I'm also joined by my co-host, Professor Chris Dede, Senior Research Fellow at Harvard Graduate School of Education and Associate Director for the Research at the U.S. National AI Institute for Adult Learning and Online Education. In today's episode, we turn to one of the most critical challenges in global education. How can technology, and increasingly AI, be used to strengthen foundational literacy and numeracy at scale? And keyword here is at scale. While much of global conversation focus on advanced skills, future jobs, the reality is that millions of learners are still struggling with basic reading and numeracy. This raises an important question. Can technology really help close this gap in a meaningful, scalable, inclusive way? We are honored to be joined today with a team from Chimple, a nonprofit and a Global Learning X Prize finalist, which has developed a gamified learning platform that improves literacy and numeracy among children. Chimple is part of a growing team headquartered in Bangalore, India, working across multiple geographies to deliver curriculum-aligned, multilingual, and offline-capable learning solutions. Joining today, we have Srikanth Talapadi, founder and CEO of Chimple, Ashay Agrawal, Director of Product and Program Development at Chimple, and Adarsh Warrior, Director of Programs at Kitskaran Foundation, who is one of the implementation partners for Chimple, to give us a reality of how their experience was when using these tools. This makes today's discussion particularly valuable, that we are hearing from team across products, strategy, field implementation, and giving us more complete view of how such solutions are designed and deployed in real-world context. Thank you all for joining us today. And to begin, maybe I'll invite each one of you to introduce yourself, share what draws you to this work, and why systems perspective felt necessary at this moment.
Yeah, thanks, Waleed, and thanks for that great introduction. So I'm really honored to be part of this podcast. So I am Srikanth Talapadi. I am the CEO and founder of Chimple. So I want to take you back about 10 years ago. I know my son was quite young at that time, and I used to read him storybooks all the time. And then there was this girl. She was from Nepal, and her dad was a watchman in one of the construction sites nearby. So she used to come to our house, and she used to also listen to me reading storybooks. And then whenever I read, I used to also give a little bit more introduction to her, a little bit more teaching to her. And in a matter of, few months, she was able to actually learn how to read, English in a halting manner. And then I used to ask her, so Sita, what do you want to be when you grow up? So she used to love watching these TV serials. So she said, I want to be a lawyer. Then I was like really excited, I made a difference in one child's life. Then one day her dad got moved to a different construction site, which was far away from any school. And her mother also gave birth to another baby. So what I heard was that, they removed her from school, and they wanted her to watch the baby. So this kind of saddened me a bit. But more than that, I started thinking, how can I, with my technological background, so I am an engineer and an entrepreneur by background. So what can I do to actually help mitigate this problem? At the same time, there was this competition announced called the Global Learning X Prize. And the thesis there was quite simple. So what they said was, can you build an app that you can load onto any cheap Android phone and then give it to a child aged 4 to 10? And can the child by themselves learn how to read and write without the help of a teacher, without the help of a parent, without the help of a sibling? So this seemed to kind of mesh with what I had been thinking about. So I started Chimple, and then we assembled a team of technologists, product developers, curriculum developers, everybody. And the first 3 years we concentrated on that. So building from scratch, our product became one of the top 5 finalists. UNESCO ran a pilot with Chimple software in Swahili language in Tanzania. And what came about was that after 15 months of usage, children actually improved both their reading, writing, and mathematics skills by about 18%. And this was a great outcome for us. So after that, we started focusing a lot more on India, and also a lot of it in terms of, intervening in government schools, intervening in public systems, etc. So that has been the journey of Chimple from about 10 years ago. And as the conversation goes on, I will also come in and kind of describe what else we have been trying out as well.
No, thank you, Waleed and Chris, for having us here. So my name is Ashay Agrawal. I am the head of product at Chimple. My background has been with about 15 years of experience as the product management, specifically into technology and data domains. So two things. One, during this time when I was working in technology and data domains, I volunteered for a couple of not-for-profits in education domain, and I worked with girls from low-income families, and I actually taught them technology like web development courses, and then I was able to see these were kids who you were coming to the vocational institute to get like a job of a receptionist or to get a job like learning basic Excel skills and then get into data entry jobs. But then after the course where we were helping them learn web development courses via project-based learning, it became clear that even these small changes that we can do in terms of what we teach them can uplevel their life from a 1x or a 2x, 1.5x to a 5 of intervention. The SMBs close to her in her neighborhood. So very strong transformation that we saw during that time as where I was working as a volunteer, which made me move full time into education as a domain. With education as a domain and having my skill sets in data, it felt that to solve a population scale problem, it's important that we take data-driven decisions where we know how data is really helping with the learning gains, learning outcomes, and to solve a systematic system level problem at a scale of population, which is like India as a geography, it became important that data, education, and technology is kind of the my focus area, and I want to be at. And that's where Chimple felt very right fit for me. And thus, I joined Chimple about 2 years now, and have been working on building solutions in education domain at a population scale.
Thank you for having me, Chris, and Waleed, and everyone else. So I will just add a brief background of myself. So I have been working in the education sector for the past 10 years. I started in a depth level where I started as a teacher, and then I was also a school principal or vice principal. So I saw education at you can say an implementation level, at a deep level for the first 6 years, both in the urban level, also in the rural setup in India. After that, after 10 years, I identified a few issues, especially in terms of rural India and with respect to the underprivileged populations in India. There is a severe lack of infrastructure, educational infrastructure, specifically in rural India and specific to primary grades. Grades 1 to 5, many cases in many government schools in rural India, they have 2 teachers and 2 classrooms. So it's a common sight where grade 1, 2, 3 sit in one classroom, grade 4, 5 sit in one classroom. So as a result, right now, more than one out of 2 children, more than 50% of grade 5 children are unable to read simple grade 2 level text. And as Dr. Waleed had mentioned, that this is a severe challenge where there is a lack of FLN. So when there is a lack of foundational literacy and numeracy, how will we in India progress as a nation? Because more than 67% of our population still living in the villages. And if you take in statistics, the age group of 5 to 12, the children living in rural India is 123 million, which is actually the total population of Japan. So if we are neglecting them, we need a very fast change, and we need a change which has to be at scale. And what I saw also is an opportunity, because there is a digital revolution in India. Around 95% of the villages are having internet connectivity, and almost 90% of households have at least one smartphone. Every other household in India, there is accessibility to technology, but they don't have a know-how. That is when we thought of a model where, and in this day and age, our project runs in a philosophy that in this day and age, for a child to learn, you don't have to necessarily teach the child. Just like how Srikanth was mentioning, if you give a good environment for the child to learn on their own, so the child can engage in self-learning, learning can happen. So that is one core philosophy in our model. So that is the genesis of the project which we are doing right now, Project Need at Sashaktikan Foundation. And what we essentially very briefly do is we hire women, we recruit and train women in rural areas to operate digital devices in which an app is installed. Currently, we are only having in Chimple, and that app is providing gamified interactive learning, and children spend at least 30 minutes a day engaging at learning, self-learning at their own learning level, at least for 30 minutes a day, which is facilitated by an adult person, the woman, but it is largely based on self-learning. So yeah, thank you so much. The more details I can share later.
Well, I'm delighted that you've chosen to join us, and of course, your origin story is very inspiring, and it also underscores that to make a big difference, you don't have to start with $1 billion and a whole bunch of PhDs who are experts in specialty areas. That there are tremendous things that can be done by groups of dedicated people who really care about children and who have, the STEM knowledge to be able to apply digital technologies. A couple things strike me about Chimple that make it unique and therefore of great interest. One of them is that typically people either focus on in-school literacy or they focus on informal, out-of-school literacy. And the fact that Chimple bridges both, I think, is very powerful. That it can be used just by a child by themselves if necessary, or with supervision by a parent or supervision by a paraprofessional, as you're describing. But it also can become part of a larger curriculum. And that dual role, I think, is very powerful in terms of design. The other thing that I want to highlight is that it's joyous. I mean, looking at the videos of Chimple in use, the children are obviously highly motivated, very exciting, having a lot of fun. And one of the things that's troubling to me about a lot of reading programs that do teach children to read is that the children are not motivated by it. It's kind of boring, if anything. And so even though they can read, often they don't bother to read. They don't see reading as fun. They don't see reading as powerful because their early experience with reading has not been motivating. And I think Chimple, clearly makes children very excited about reading and infuses a lot of fun into it. I don't know if these things are part of your philosophy, but they're things that strike me as I listen to you.
Yeah, Chris. So, I mean, definitely, I mean, you highlighted two items which are very closely held by us. One is learning anywhere, anytime, right? So initially, when we started Chimple, our whole goal was that we would have these tablets that we or some NGO would buy, and then we would go to schools, go to community centers, and then children would use them exclusively, which was great. I mean, that's I feel still the core model of Chimple. But the problem what we hit there was in terms of scalability. So India is a country where unlike the West, where devices are omnipresent in any school that you go, in India, devices are not present, especially in primary schools. So, we can maybe talk of 100 schools, maybe donating tablets to 100 schools, maybe even 500 schools or 1,000 schools. But then we're going to hit a wall because we will not have enough funding to get all the devices that we purchase. And then 3 years later, we're going to hit the same problem because then we'll have to refresh those devices. So the other thing that proved very sort of insightful to us was that there was a survey, Bharat Tech survey done, which actually said that every Indian home, about 85% of Indian homes do have a smartphone with them with internet connectivity. And surprisingly, children are using those devices, which previously people thought, children may not get their hands on these devices. But these devices are actually used by children to watch YouTube, to watch, things on Facebook, TikTok, right? Entertainment things. So what we as Chimple thought was that why not have children just convert just 10 minutes of their day to actually learn something, especially foundational literacy and numeracy, rather than devoting all the 60 minutes, which currently they do per day, on entertainment. Now, this is also backed by an RCT that Chimple did. So in the state of Haryana, we had a 1-year RCT that we did, where we had a teacher-led at-home program, is what we call. So teachers, so the Chimple app is catering towards children, which is our primary focus group, but also to teachers, because we believe that learning is most beneficial when all the stakeholders are actively involved. So teachers can actually open the Chimple app and then they can see the list of all their students. They can see what each child has been doing, where they are weak, or where do they need some bolstering, and also assign homework from the Chimple app, which the child can go home and then do it on their parents' devices. So as part of this RCT, what came about was just 10 minutes of Chimple a day by a child in the first and second grade over the course of 1 year is equivalent to one additional year of schooling, which was a incredible statistic for us. It also kind of reinforced our belief that, learning, even though it happens in a haphazard manner at home, it actually is beneficial to the extent of one additional year. So this actually gave us more sort of impetus to say, we are going to focus on learning anywhere. It could be at school, it could be at home, it could be at the community center, or wherever the opportunity lies for the child. Now, this 10 minutes that I told also reflects the second point that you told. What we believe is learning has to be fun. But if the child doesn't enjoy learning, they're going to switch off the tablet. And in today's day of open internet, if the child doesn't find Chimple interesting or engaging, they're just going to switch to YouTube. So for us to actually prevent that, our goal is always two aspects. One is, of course, to make every learning experience and every learning session enjoyable for the child. Now, the second, which we are just starting to deploy, and then Ashay can go into it in a bit more detail, is learning at the right level. So you actually go to a classroom, a teacher can actually make sure that the whole class is learning at the right level, or teaching at the right level is what it's called. But how can we make it as learning at the right level? So we have a personalized and adaptive layer, which is mapped to the Indian Nippon curriculum, whereby we make sure that each child is learning at the right level, which means a child will not be bored, nor will be over-challenged or not under-challenged as well. So with these two things, we hope to increase the usage of Chimple both at home and in school.
So one of our themes is AI. And tell us about how you're using AI as part of the adaptive gamified learning and personalization.
So Ashay, maybe you can take this.
Yes. No, so Chris, what we have, as she has mentioned, that our goal was to build a system which is backed in the frameworks, not the curriculum frameworks, which we had started out with, but is important that it becomes adaptive in nature for the child to show the right content that they need at the right time, such that it pays out. A fast child should not read the content which is like repetitive in nature and kind of they are doing the same thing. They will get bored very fast. Same, a learner who is not catching up with concept should not be able to shown a content because the teacher says so, because there is 30:1 ratio and the teacher wants to keep the course moving ahead. But a child is not able to understand that. There, like the stat says that 8 out of 10 students who are in grade 3 are not able to do basic subtraction. They can't read to learn, because they can't learn to read, right? So given that, that was our initial thought process from PAL perspective or personalized adaptive learning perspective. What we had done in this is focused on 3 fundamental layers. One is the placement diagnostics. So what we do or what we kickstart in the app is anyone who gets access to the app takes a gamified assessment, right? This assessment is not like a casual assessment, which is like a lengthy 80-pager assessment, but we have built in adaptiveness even in the placement diagnostic assessment, where it's game-based, in which a child feels like they are playing the game and are moving ahead in the assessments. Obviously, it is backed via global standards. So these assessments are backed via EGRA and EGMA standards, such that it is globally accepted, as well as these assessments are helping us understand the initial layer or initial starting point of every learner that comes to the product. Once they take the assessment, that gives us signals, right? And these are probabilistic signals to start off with, because the next layer, which is the competency framework, is actually backed with a whole lot of learning outcomes based upon what state we are heading to. So in India, government in their 2020 education policy, which we call it National Education Policy, has given a good amount of competency-based framework which can help us understand how should a student move through the skills and the learning outcomes pathway. What we have done, we have mapped all our lessons, or which we say games, to these framework, such that knowing the signals from the placement diagnostics that we have taken, we give the starting point to each learner, which is differently. Like learner A would have a starting point which might be learning 0 to 5 as numbers in maths, but a learner who would have done good in assessments score would be taken out to multiplication itself as an exercise, right? So the starting point of each learner is different, and that is being backed completely via the Nippon framework, which is the India-based framework, which is mandated or as a guideline given to us by the government in their 2020 NEP policy. Now, this starts with this starting point with the initial understanding of the learner, but the recommendation doesn't end here. Now, every lesson or every activity that is played via the learner, we get a signal of the game, and that's not a score as a game. How many wrong moves they are making, how many right moves that they are making, how many attempts that they are making to do a 2 plus 3 equal to 5, which is how many attempts they are making to do the groupings of objects, if it is a group based kind of a multiplication kind of learning, to get more and more signals per game that is being played, to know how they are performing in that skill. Now the last layer, which is the algorithm. So we have used some open source algorithm which were already in the market, because we didn't want to reinvent the wheel, which we can plug and play into this framework of recommending the next skills particularly. Thus, PAL itself for us is open sourced as well. Like our core philosophy of Chimple is to open source our product, and Shri talked about a larger ecosystem that we see ourselves as. But PAL itself is open source. It's a plug and play system where today, if I am using one algorithm, tomorrow I can tweak the algorithm to also see which gives a better recommendation to the user. Plus, since we have outsourced our, open sourced our recommendation engine, any of the other companies throughout can use our competency framework, can use our assessment framework, can use our diagnostic framework to plug it into their system to help give better recommendations at a personalized level to every learner in this universe.
Well, that's open source emphasis is certainly exciting because it lets you empower other kinds of curricula as well. Dr. Waleed, as I listen to this, I'm hearing themes that are similar to the kinds of instructional and learning strategies that the digital school has used, not just for literacy and numeracy, but more broadly.
Yeah, I think what's interesting in the Chimple model is the scale, and many edtech tools, they struggle to scale impact because they focus on building this app or solution, and they struggle in terms of how people will use it, how adoption will happen at scale. I think Sri and Ashay mentioned a couple of things around mapping to the national curriculum, simplified use, gamified aspects. But I think what's interesting is, and it will be good to hear, how did you look into the adoption process? How you managed to make Chimple from just a tool within a classroom scale to something that is embedded within an education system at a national level. So, how did you overcome that element from being just the uh, application developer to driving adoption at scale?
Yeah, Walid, I think you bring a great point. You can have the greatest app in the world, but if it's not being used, then it's not really effective and impactful. Um, so through the journey of Chimple, we've also kind of experimented with different models. We started out as saying, like I mentioned, the global learning exercise that you create the app, you get it in the hands of users, and then learning will happen automatically. It will, maybe for 10 students or 20 students, or maybe even 100. But once you start of thinking in terms of scale, in terms of whole districts, for example, the issue is that you have to be a part of the education system to begin with. So the way we handle this is we look at each stakeholder and say what are their pain points and what are their capabilities that they can assist Chimple in the process. So we, like I mentioned, we have a teachers app which is embedded in Chimple. We also have a analytics dashboard which can be given to the district officers, the education officers. So just to give you an example of how we approach education at, let's say, a district level, right? So the first thing what we do is we meet with the education officers, with the headmasters of a few schools in a particular district. And then we understand the literacy and numeracy needs of that particular district. Then we actually have collateral for teachers, collateral for education officers. So we kind of educate them on what are the benefits of Chimple. And then the third and the most important thing are the parents, right? So we have Chimple field coordinators actually go to parent-teacher meetings, and then we sort of publicize Chimple as a way through which children can attain these skills at home, even when they are, not at school. Now, with a combination of these three things, we bring in the publicity of Chimple first. They always say that the first use is always the toughest, right? Because when children or any user kind of start using it, if they are not happy with it for the first 5 minutes or 10 minutes, they will never reuse it, right? But before that even happens, we want to make sure that they are looking at Chimple at the right way. They're not looking at Chimple as an entertainment app. They're not looking at Chimple as a boring app. So it is sort of, in the niche that, it's just entertaining enough, but it's a learning app, right? So we kind of let the children, parents and teachers know that, so that once the children start using it at home, they kind of have the right mentality. The parents also have the right mentality.
So
Now
maybe
we can,
how was
yeah.
the model? So you convinced the education authority, and then they will recognize it as an official app or a tool within the education system. And then will you go extra mile and go to the parents, or that's the education authority or one of your partners like Adarsh here? How you ensure, because you have many layers in terms of adoption. First, getting the initial approval, then getting people to use it, and spreading the awareness, then maintaining the usage. Because if you leave it like that, people will find out other tools and will not continue. So how do you do that? What's your formula for that?
Yeah, yeah, Waleed. So you came to like the biggest pain point of Chimple or any other edtech app, which is retention and sustained usability, right? So the few of the things which you mentioned are what we do. So the first is we have agreements in place with the district education officers. Before we do that, we also sort of make sure that the Chimple app and the content aligns with the local state curriculum and the language of that particular state. So, as you know, India has a lot of languages, about 22 official ones, and more than 28 states. We sort of make sure that Chimple caters to that particular district. And then we have a sort of information session where we call all the teachers, all the headmasters of that particular district, and then we kind of describe the Chimple app. Then comes the rostering. So we want to make sure that every child in that district is rostered onto the Chimple app, along with the phone number, because then we go to the schools. We have parent-teacher meetings. There we encourage parents to download the Chimple app. Then the final piece of it is repeated homeworks by the teacher. So the only way a teacher knows that children are using it at home is actually the teacher looks at the teacher's console and then says, I finished teaching chapter 1 today. So now I'm going to go to Chimple and I'm going to look at all the fun exercises that deal with chapter 1. And then I'm going to assign them to the children. So the parents get two messages. One, they get a message in the Chimple app saying, hey, your teacher has assigned, these exercises or these Chimple activities to your child. The second is WhatsApp. So as you are aware, WhatsApp is the communication platform, even for teachers and parents. So we have a WhatsApp message as well, telling the parent that, an assignment has been given. Then the child has anywhere from a week to 2 to actually complete that assignment, and the teacher will continue monitoring. Now, whenever a teacher looks at her or his dashboard, they will actually see how many children have finished the homework. So this actually is a proxy to how much engagement and how much use is happening at the home.
So you are embedding this into the educational like roster and activity and everything. What's a typical timeline from starting within a district until getting it embedded? Some people assume it's matter of weeks. Some people know practically it will take. What was your experience within that?
Yeah, so it varies. So in districts, in places where we do it in a lightweight manner, which is essentially each teacher has a code that she gives to the parents, and then the parents self-roster themselves. It is, I would say, 3 to 4 weeks. But in places where we take over the rostering, because we take data from the government system, we do the rostering, we do the training, we do the sort of hand holding of the parents to actually install Chimple. I would say 2 to 3 months is what it would take for the initial setup and continuing to see sustained use of Chimple.
If you can tell us about your role within, how did you come to work with Chimple? How do you, what's your role within that? What benefits you've seen in terms of impact?
Sure. So how we came to look at Chimple is when we started, our problem statement was how can we create a learning environment which is edtech enabled, which can be implemented by somebody who is not super educated. So if you look at primary school education, so if primary grade teachers, they have to be B.Ed qualified. But however, the women that we work with, they do not need high educational qualifications or even a B.Ed DP. We only looked at one competency per se, the competency being they must be proficient in FLN themselves, foundational literacy and numeracy themselves. So now the problem is what the problem we are trying to solve is, can we recruit such a woman with minimal educational qualification, and can we enable her to create a learning environment? So that was what we thought of, and we looked for apps, and Chimple was the best fit for that. And what the first thing that struck a chord for us with Chimple was also the strong belief in self-learning. So the women that we recruit, they only facilitate the learning environment. So here, the learning environment is facilitated. The children have to engage in self-learning. So the model of the app, just the interface, the philosophy is what struck a chord in us. To say, and few things I would like to add. If so, in the traditional model where teachers are trained to teach, how much ever we try and do that, there are certain downsides to it, because each teacher, when they are trained, their absorption is different. And at the end of the day, at in rural India, especially when there is teacher shortage, ultimately the teacher is teaching multi-grade children, and it is really difficult to kind of cater to each child's learning level, because every child is at a different learning level, and it requires a higher grade competency to cater to multi-grade students. So, there are also a lot teachers are also kind of overburdened with administrative tasks. The education department, the teachers and primary grade teachers are one of the largest workforce, where a lot of administrative duties are also given to them, which kind of reduces their teaching time. So that is when we thought we need some additional model where teachers have partners, implementing partners, and these implementing partners need not be a B.Ed graduate, Bachelor of Education graduate. That kind of increases the democratization bit, and every woman who has basic foundational literacy in numeracy can implement the model. I know Srikanth was mentioning it is the vision is to make it completely self-learning. As in, you don't need anybody is a vision, and that is a great, bold vision. And if the child is able to do that with minimal adult involvement, suddenly the requirement, the democratization is way higher right now. So any person who has minimal education qualification can create a learning environment when the child learns. So that increases scalability to a great level. And we have seen great results in terms of impact. So let us say very crude way, children who have engaged in Chimple, who did not know how to read and write at all, they have in the beginning of the year, I'm talking about children who have been attending every day. Attendance is key here. And Srikanth had mentioned in their model, they're envisioning 10 minutes per day. In our model, there is a slight difference. We are increasing the time. We are trying to push for 20 to 25 minutes a day. So that sustained engagement has kind of seen substantial growth, at least by 1 to 2 grade levels. We have seen. We have exceptional cases have seen 3-4 grade levels increase as well. Certain children right now in grade 1, they have completed syllabus of Hindi as well in one subject.
So your role was driving the adoption among communities that you work with through this network of community, I would say, educators or parents that work with you. Did you look into other areas like the connectivity, if there's a connectivity need, the devices? What other roles you ensure to cover the whole cycle?
Right. Very briefly, procurement of the devices first. The devices have the digital devices which we use are digital tablets. The procurement of the same. Where to partnering with the right government partners to find the implementation avenues. Where can we implement the learning model? Conceptualization of the learning model itself in terms of implementing model, not the app, just the implementing model, on how the app can be implemented using women who are recruited. And just after these 3 things, just overseeing the operations of implementation. That is, these 4 things I can think of. And also kind of seeing the effectiveness of implementation through consistent monitoring and evaluation.
So let me raise an issue that I know is important in the United States, and I suspect it's important in every country. And that is what in this country are called exceptional children, meaning children who have speech and language processing challenges. And these challenges are sensory and biological. So they're not, they're something that the child is essentially born with. And one of the national AI institutes in this country, parallel to the one that I'm with adult learning and online education, is called the National AI Institute for Exceptional Education. And basically, what they're using AI to do is early screening and intervention. Because for children who have dyslexia or some other form of basically body-based deficit, standard approaches, even really wonderful standard approaches, don't work because the whole way that they process speech and language is different. And so the screening and then working with language specialists to help children like that. I don't know whether you all already are familiar with this institute or with other groups that have similar kinds of ways of screening for exceptionality, but it seems to me that with the kind of data structure that you have and the open source, that this could be powerful for making sure that every child is able to eventually get through the challenge of literacy and numeracy.
Thank you all. And on closing, this has been really a grateful, forward-looking, and inspirational conversation. And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this episode of the Digital Education Dialogues. As we continue the session, we will keep exploring how AI can be leveraged not only to transform education, but also to expand opportunities, unlock potentials, and build more inclusive futures. Until next time.